point in arming teachers with handguns because handguns, well, they're too slow, or the ammunition is too slow to stop a school shooter armed with a rifle. Can't make this up. Eric, what's your take on this?
I mean, that's the craziest bullet-related aerodynamic theory I've heard since the magic bullet theory from the JFK assassination, man. First we go from bullets that zigzag in midair. First we go from bullets that zigzag in midair like a Looney Tunes cartoon to like a race between two different kinds of bullets that you would see on another Looney Tunes cartoon. Oh my god, the media.
It was specifically anchor, his name's Lawrence O'Donnell. He said that, quote, a bullet fired from an AR-15 travels 3 times faster than one from a handgun. And yet the president and the NRA think giving teachers these guns will stop a school shooter. So he's essentially saying that the bullets will not impact the shooter fast enough to put him down to save lives. So there's just no point in having those guns.
It's like a climax of Reservoir Dogs where they all shoot each other like simultaneously. Like, that's what they think is going to happen. Like a shootout between armed teacher and a shooter. Bam, bam, bam. Oh, both dead at the same time. Not how it works. No.
Sam, go ahead.
You know, I'm not going to say that I'm a gun expert. I'm not one that shoots guns or anything, really. And these people have obviously never shot a gun in their lives. They obviously do not know how they work or how they function or anything. I don't know. It's amazing. It's just amazing that they think that they know so much about an issue in which they know nothing about.
It takes me back. I was just going to say, it takes me back to the aftermath of the Vegas shooting, and they were all going off on bump stocks, right? And CNN had that, like, moving graphic of the gun equipped with a bump stock, and it looked like it was humping itself, and gun experts are like, that's not how a bump stock works.
My favorite were all the attachments that you can put on your AR-15. The chainsaw attachment was the best one yet.
Evil Dead up in here.
Meme status. It was beautiful.
Yeah, that's like the Evil Dead come true, man.
It really. Oh god.
This sort of competes. It gives a run for its money. That the CNN, I think, they had a demo where they were like displaying like the awful power of an AR-15, but it was actually a shotgun. And they were like, look what this AR-15 can do to a watermelon, and it was actually a shotgun.
It was a 12-gauge shotgun.
It's a part of this hysteria that people on the left are progressives. I don't even know if it's progressives only, because it's like Sam said, it's, you know, you can be conservative and not know a lot about guns either, but it's kind of like a rule of thumb is if you don't know what you're talking about, keep your mouth shut. That way, if you are ignorant, at least people don't know that you're ignorant immediately based on your behavior, you know. And it's funny because maybe the best example of this was that guy. He started the One Less movement. I can't think of his name off the top of my head, but he started that really sentimental like hashtag One Less, and it began with this guy who's sitting on his porch, and he has like his first AR-15 in his hands, and he kind of reminisces over when he first bought it, and then he says that after what happened in Florida, I mean, and it comes from like it comes from a good place, I guess. Like he was very sincere, but so after he kind of regales you with how sad he is, not regales not the right word. But after he, you know, explains to you how he's a gun owner and how he just can't be a gun owner anymore after what happened in Florida, he gets up, goes to the back of his porch, and drops his saw on the barrel of his rifle, and he comes back with what is essentially a short-barreled assault rifle.
Plot twist, it was secretly a tutorial video on how to make a sawed-off shotgun.
Right, is what he did. He gets up with the intention to destroy his AR, and he comes back with a short-barreled rifle. And he says, well, now there's one less. It's funny because the words he uses, now there's one less of these out there that can hurt people. As if now his newly modified short-barrel assault rifle had the potential to sprout legs and get up. But it's just funny because, again, he's so, like, proud of what it's so solemn and what he's done. It's like you've just turned that thing into like a pocket shooter, you know.
You know the meme of Patrick from SpongeBob where his eyes just get brighter and brighter and it gets more and more distorted of him. Like it gets like the picture of him gets worse and worse. It was basically when you arm the teachers, when you arm whatever, when you arm your arms for their arms to be like, oh my god. That's what I conceive of when I think of people saying, well, the gun, like it's just gonna sprout legs and shoot you. That's the gun's fault because the gun obviously has a mind of its own. You have to arm the arms to protect your arms from arms, obviously.
Maybe that's a good underbarrel attachment to do to an assault rifle, is you attach a pistol to the underbarrel of the assault rifle, so then the gun is armed.
There you go!
They actually, it's funny because they actually have, well, not pistols, but they do have underbarrel shotguns.
Oh wow, but, I should get that.
Let's not do a whole episode on underbarrel shotguns. But this sort of ties in with the 7 companies that have decided to nix the NRA, including the First National Bank has decided that as a response to, I guess at least their official announcement wasn't that pointed. It's just they say like, well, due to customer feedback, that they've reviewed the relationship with the NRA, and of course that means that they're no longer associated with them. But who uses First National Bank anyways? I didn't even know that was a bank.
I didn't know that was a thing. I thought Jackson got rid of that thing.
It is.
Omaha. It's First National Bank, Omaha.
The First National Bank actually does exist. They have them in like country areas pretty much. It's your small town bank. I just know because
so like a rural bank basically. Okay.
Yeah, pretty much.
All right. But what were some of the other ones then?
Enterprise Rent-A-Car. That might have been Enterprise Rent-A-Car was the first big one that I heard of, but it's not the last one.
Nope.
And same thing.
Avis actually did, which upsets me because I use Avis, so I have to stop using them. So.
Yeah, I mean that's basically what they're doing is that's what they're asking for. If you're going to drop the NRA based on these this blatantly politicized anti-Second Amendment message, then your consumers are going to drop you.
Yeah.
And the big one, and this is great because I actually travel quite a bit. So this is great for me. Delta Airlines and United.
United's on the list too?
I'm so excited to never fly with either of those airlines again.
I actually like United. I hated them. Then I started liking them. Now I have to hate them again. And Delta Airlines is like the only airline that flies out of Cincinnati. So
I've never used Delta.
I have to find a new airport. I have to find a new airport entirely.
I've never used Delta Airlines in the past, but like United, we fly United a lot. But I remember all the recent gaffes that United had, as if we needed one more reason to hate United. It's like everybody's favorite airline. Oh, there goes their Second Amendment support.
Yep.
Right. And it's funny because the article, the one that I'm looking at, it's on Breitbart. It actually mentions Ed Krasenstein, that an insufferable guy who no one actually really knows who he is. We just know that he's verified on Twitter, and he just complains about Trump a lot. And
he can often be seen as like one of the top responses to like just about every single Trump tweet. That's how he got his check mark. He's one of the top Trump critics, basically.
Right. He just stays awake 24 hours a day and sort of sobs publicly on Trump's tweets and everyone. But again, no one really knows who he is. I think on his Twitter it says like he's an entrepreneur.
You look at that picture of him too. He's like standing in front of he's on a balcony overlooking what could be LA Valley. I don't know. And he has these sunglasses on and this gelled up hairstyle that just has jerk written all over it. Like even if you knew nothing about his political beliefs, he just looks like a poser.
He might actually be a Russian bot.
Ooh,
so
maybe.
We have Symantec, MetLife, we mentioned Enterprise and First National, Delta Airlines, United Airlines, Best Western.
Not Best Western.
So those are all companies that I am excited to never do business with again.
Likewise.
I'm not excited, but I won't because I have principles, and I'm not giving them up anytime
soon. If you have principles, you also wouldn't use Google anymore. Do you still use Google?
Ooh.
Yes, but it's convenient for maps. It is the most convenient maps. I use it everywhere in the world. It is great for that.
Hashtag break up Google.
It's no. We don't need the federal government to do that.
Didn't say that and like liberals had a meltdown.
Oh.
I think Tucker Carlson said something about how like the like companies like Google present serious questions about these corporations that can have the potential to influence so many people, and they're obviously biased. This whole we're gonna check the facts for you and let you see what we want you to see.
Right.
Tuck sort of mentioned that this raises some questions over what these companies should be allowed to do as private entities that essentially control media, and libertarians just had a meltdown. Gadsden went straight up, and they were they took to arms, and they're like, Tucker Carlson's a statist, because if you say anything that they don't like, you're automatically a statist.
I thought that was the default libertarian insult.
It's the best insult. It really is.
For libertarians, maybe, but I don't know. I wasn't aware that the mainstream media was a bunch of libertarians now, but oh well. Thankfully, though, you mentioned all the fact checks that they control now, Pedro, like Google and whatnot. Fortunately, even their fact checks cannot cover up the other thing we wanted to get into, one of the other major facts on gun control we want to talk about, and that's the amount of lobbying money being spent by all these teachers' unions, which are now really pulling out pardon the pun, all the big guns and their anti-Second Amendment marches. So, you had some of the rundown on that?
Right, because I had read this nifty article about the California Teaching Association and the National Education Association. These two huge lobbying groups. Well, everyone's been complaining about how much money the NRA spends in lobbying, and how much money the argument is that the NRA spends millions and millions and millions of dollars lobbying to have your children killed.
Mm-hmm.
And then as this that's absurd. In 2017, the NRA only spent between $2 and $3 million in lobbying. It wasn't that much. What compared to Planned Parenthood, which we can get into that in a different episode. If Planned Parenthood decides to step into the ring against the NRA, we can compare the amount of lobbying that goes into there. And Sam had pointed out that the Planned Parenthood gets money from the federal government as well, which NRA just gets money from people like me. But
my parents.
Just sort of a cursory look at how much money is in NEA and how much power that they have. And just an estimate that I pulled up in 2010, the dues accounted for $357 million of the union's $76 million in total revenues.
My God.
Yeah, and they have so much influence. When a so-called teachers union is one of the consistent, most powerful entities in the Beltway. That sort of tells you.
It is.
You want to talk about money
a lot. They're powerful, especially in the states.
Right.
They're very powerful among the
California.
states. They have complete chokeholds on the state education systems, and in Ohio they entrenched the unions into the state constitution. Back in 2010, back in 2011, that was the huge reason John Kasich got elected in the first place. He was promised to break them up, and he couldn't because we passed a popular referendum to bypass his legislation. It kind of shows, kind of goes against it kind of makes an argument against democracy, pure democracy right there, because we elected John Kasich to do that, and we just bypassed it anyway.
Sad.
What was the point?
I'm looking at the. Oh, sorry. I was just gonna say. I was looking at the coverage of the difference between NRA spending and the teachers union spending, and you're right. They spend hundreds of millions more. But the NRA, they talk
literally. It's not an exaggeration either. It's hundreds of millions.
It is.
And the charts. They have the chart showing
they get hundreds of billions from taxes already.
Hold on. Okay, Eric.
I was gonna say they just have this chart showing the progress of the NRA's spending on on politics in general. From 2008, it's consistently stayed below 1 million, and then in quarter one of 2017, it jumped to 2.3 million. Again, 2.3 million compared to the teachers union's 100 millions. But the headline reads, "NRA lobbying spending hits new high in 2017." And this just reminds me of the headline from a couple of years ago, I think, where they reported the number of deaths of homeless people in America is now women make up 25% of the deaths of homeless people. And I look at that, I'm like, so in other words, men make up 75% of homeless deaths in America. That makes sense. They're focusing on the molehill instead of the mountain when it comes to this, and it's just absolutely ridiculous. Because you're right, the numbers definitely do not add up, and making the NRA look like the almighty puppet master that the media wants you to believe they are.
No, and Sam, I know that you're eager to say something, but I wanted to add on to that is that when stuttering so much, when the unions decided to step into the ring and get on the soapbox against the NRA, it reminded me of this article that I read a while back about how New York could not fire these group of teachers throughout the city that were all considered either too incompetent or actually too dangerous, and that's the word that they used. That these teachers were considered too dangerous to work in public school classrooms, but they could not be immediately released by public schools, because of unions. And the city ended up paying, I think, around $30 million to hold on. Well, because they had no choice. They couldn't fire them because unions protect them, because unions, make so much money off of every teacher that is working and paying dues. And so again, it's such a joke for these unions to get into it and say enough is enough, and we abolish the NRA or end stop funding the NRA. There's too much money in politics. It's such a joke. How especially when you consider that these unions basically kind of guarantee that a lot of kids all over the United States don't receive a quality education, which kind of sets them up for failure, and kids end up in poverty, it's kind of create. I don't want to make this huge horseshoe. It's because these unions make sure that kids don't get a good education, they end up in poverty and therefore turn to violence, and because they turn to violence, but it's phenomenally hypocritical for the California Teachers Association and the NEA to get involved and say enough is enough and condemn the NRA's money.
I mean, the inherent problem with teachers' unions as a whole and any government union is the fact that unions exist to protect people who pay into it. They don't exist for the children. They don't exist for the people's houses burning down. They don't exist for the people who get shot. They exist for the people paying the dues. That's great in private sector. That works at a minimal scale in the private sector. Once you get bigger, it just stops working. But, that's a different story. But in the public sector, you have no way to fight that. You can't. The point of paying taxes is to benefit the person paying taxes, not the person paying their union dues. And I mean, we're the ones paying the union dues. So it creates the whole issue with that, and then they think that they have a right to unionize now.
They love to,
and they think that they have all this power because they have all this money. And they love the fact that they have all this power right now. They don't want to get rid of it anytime soon. So if you disarm the populace, that's an easy way to do it, frankly.
Right. And they're trying to, they're trying to enroll as many people as they can in this movement. There's going to be a March for Our Lives on March 24th. Kids and families of March for Our Lives will take to the streets of Washington, D.C. Oh, my God. To demand that their lives and safety become a priority and that we end this epidemic of mass school shootings.
Epidemic.
So, who promised these people the world was safe?
Well, that question's absurd. That point is absurd. That it's like Emma Gonzalez. We're going to be the last generation that sees a shooting.
No.
No. We're going to be the generation that abolishes violence. All right. It's so absurd. But
world peace, everybody.
People at the top of these unions, they don't care about kids. They obviously don't even care about their education. It's about money. It's about getting more people to support them.
Of course.
And this is very quickly. If this isn't a march for our lives, this is going to be a march against President Trump. It's going to be a march against gun owners. It's going to be a march against what it always is, against the right, or not even the right. Anyone who disagrees. If you're a progressive gun owner, there are such things. If you're a progressive gun owner and you used to give up your gun, congratulations, you're now a right-wing person. That's how this works. It's intolerance for everybody who disagrees with them.
And if you wanted a prelude, a glimmer of hope coming out of Ohio, we had our Butler County Sheriff in the Cincinnati area. He put on Twitter and all his social media that he was going to offer free concealed carry and other sorts of training for teachers.
Great.
For free for 50 people. 250 teachers across the area signed up within 10 minutes. He's overwhelmed with people wanting to be trained and armed in the schools. It's, the Midwest and Middle America is going to be the one that speaks up against this, like we always have, and we're going to say stop. And it's going to happen at the ballot box, and the progressives are going to think, "Oh, look, we're winning in California." Well, congratulations.
As I
You're
said,
winning in a place that's already gone.
You mentioned California, and that's what I keep saying is as a prelude to this. Pepe, you mentioned in the last episode they call for the abolition of the Second Amendment, and of course back then people might call you crazy. They may say, "Oh, abolition of the Second Amendment, that's ridiculous." But in California, as you mentioned, the marches that these teachers unions have organized already. I think earlier. This week, I believe, they had high school walkouts all over the state, and not only did they involve a lot of kids running through malls and looting them and breaking cars in the streets, but what you also had was a lot of kids actually chanting, "No more guns, no more guns," as if the prelude, as if the facade needed to come off any further, that they literally just want to abolish the Second Amendment. And that's a prelude of what is going to happen in D.C. That's what this anti-gun lobby is organizing with, again, David Hogg and Emma Gonzalez as their cute little puppets to dance around in front of the cameras, like Linda Sarsour at the Women's March. And you're right. Hopefully, it will be something that drags all the way to the midterms. I don't think, because in this day and age, a week is an eternity in the day of social media and politics today. I don't think gun control is going to drag all the way out to November. But if it does, oh yeah, they're going to lose hardcore at the ballot box in the midterms.
I mean, Go ahead, Eric. Sam.
The thing with the kids is that they really are just they're being used. I mean, they're stupid puppets at this point for this agenda. Right. Linda Sarsour, unfortunately...
It's not necessarily the fault of the... I mean, these are
they just do not know the facts. They're ignorant. No, they're very ignorant on the facts of this issue. Yes. Linda Sarsour is very intelligent. Yes, she's terrifyingly intelligent.
Well, I'm gonna stop you right there. Linda Sarsour is an idiot. She's an idiot. She just is the people that she panders to are also. I mean, there's a difference.
I don't know. I heard.
Hang on, he's got a point. There's a difference.
There's a difference between Barack Obama pandering to these really young kids, let's say under the age of 16, right? Who probably look up to Obama, at least in the coastal areas, right? So there's a difference because they don't know any better. But when Linda Sarsour gets middle-aged women to agree with her about feminism, about Islam, then there's no excuse. Then it's like you're an adult. You should know that feminism. Well, one, feminism itself is stupid, and two, you should know that feminism and Islam, that's like
atheism and Christianity, dude. It does not work.
It's fractally wrong. That's what I think. Have you heard that term before? I might be using it incorrectly, but it's like, or I might be pronouncing it incorrectly.
Factually incorrect.
Right. Every aspect of that concept, feminist Islam, is so wrong that in any way that you view it,
it's a contradiction.
It's wrong. It's dumb and it's wrong. But again, these are middle-aged women, and there are a lot of at least like I said in the coastal areas like California, there are a lot of teachers, educators that are part of the Women's March. And again, these aren't just regular middle-aged women. These are supposed to be the educators of children who are also part of it, and they also happen to now be kind of encouraged. They are absolutely encouraging these kids who do not actually in fact know any better to go out there and march against the Second Amendment. I wouldn't say Linda Sarsour is smart. She just panders to a really ignorant.
She does, but I think she's very good at manipulation. That makes her intelligent to a degree. I mean, you have to have some intelligence to manipulate people.
Really quick. Can we just talk about that? That's such a sinister. If anybody is listening, they'll probably laugh. But that tweet from Obama, I'm sorry, it has such a sinister ring to it.
It did.
I'm gonna read it. Young people have helped lead all our great movements. How inspiring to see it again and so many smart, fearless students standing up for the right to be safe. This is the two parts that get me is he says that they're marching to remake the world as it should be. Like, whoa, boy, this sounds familiar.
Fundamental transformation.
Right, and then we've been waiting for you. That's the part that got me.
That's creepy.
We've been waiting. It's like, whoa, boy, like
that's like something from The Shining, man. That's like from The Shining. Come play with us.
And I wrote an article about this, and it's like this is cultural Marxism. This is actually a thing, and and again, a lot of like, well, that's a conspiracy. Well, no, it's not. Like it was coined that by the people that created it. Named it from the Frankfurt Institute. Like they gave that name to it themselves.
Read Gramsci, and then you'll understand.
Antonio Gramsci. That's right.
Like Herbert Marcuse. Herbert Marcuse is sort of he's another epicenter of all this stuff. But this is a thing. Taking kids. And, well, first you paint the institution of parenthood or paternalism, things like that, as inherently oppressive. So you immediately lose the right to tell a child that, like, hey, 9-year-old, maybe you don't know about, the Constitution as much as you think you do. Like, immediately you can't say it. Now you can't say that because that's a form of oppression. And not only that, not only because in everything, it's like the whole like, well, feminism is about equal rights. No, it's not.
Nope.
It might start off as that, but it's never about equal anything.
My favorite thing about every tragedy every tragedy to any leftist, I mean, any real tragedy or a tragedy to a leftist, is all the woke 8 and 9-year-olds that come out of it that magically pop up on Twitter. Well, my daughter said, well, your daughter probably doesn't have insights like you think she does. You're making it up.
Well, and that's what hits me too about the mainstream media's power over this is that this draws me back to the Roy Moore election, something that they did with all the accusations. The moment the Washington Post created them and put their actresses forward to make these accusations, it became just kind of an echo chamber with the mainstream media sources, all using the same key word. And that word was credible. After a series of credible allegations, Roy Moore, the subject of dozens of credible allegations, credible. It's the same thing here with these kids. You have these 16, 17-year-old fame-hungry brats who don't know anything about the Constitution, and the media narrative is, oh, they're so mature. Oh, they're so mature. They're so smart. Yeah. They're so mature.
There's actually
the other 98% actually said that they put out a tweet that when your kids act like adults and your adults act like children, that change is coming. And it's like, really? These children are not acting like adults. They are children. Well, they are acting like children. They don't know anything about this stuff.
And again, because we could do a whole podcast on cultural Marxism, but it'd be ridiculous to imply that these people that like the tweet that you're talking about, they consciously are following, the playbook of cultural Marxism. Like it's not like they're reading out of the book, out of the pages, but it definitely is. And I wrote about this. It definitely is a movement that resembles unconsciously the ideas and strategies of Marxism, cultural Marxism. And it is this whole the kids are now the adults in the room, and we need to listen to the kids. And like the people that are conscious about what this is, and it's a movement that plays on the adult
emotions.
Yeah, it is. It's our instinct to protect children, and it's a movement that exploits that, and the people that are consciously exploiting that, well, they're happy that so many other useful idiots, if you will, are going along with it and saying the same thing. The adults are now the children are now the experts. And going back to what Eric was saying about credibility, the word that I've seen is clout, which is the ability to speak as an expert, or to have a standing to comment on something as having experience in the issue. And that's something I've seen for the Washington Post, is that these kids like David Hogg have clout on shooting, on gun control, and implying that because they're victims, that they are now the arbiters of law in terms of the guns and constitutional law. And it's and again, it's ridiculous to imply that they're all going along with the playbook of cultural Marxism consciously, but it is absolutely resembling that. There's no doubt about it in terms of how we're being told to see these kids as above us, not as our equals, because it always starts off as equality. It's like, no, they're above us and we need to listen to them. Marco Rubio crying publicly.
Oh.
that got
God.
Just
oh my god,
just deflating in front of. Oh my god.
I just
of all the people
put
they could
somebody
get.
strong out there. You should have put Donald Trump or like Sarah Huckabee Sanders out.
Well, no. What happened is
I guarantee
Trump had that town hall at the White House with survivors and their families and families of the actual victims.
Right.
He had that town hall, and that's the thing. And there was no audience. There were cameras there to broadcast it, but there wasn't a live audience. There was no chance for applause or anything. But David Hogg, in all his arrogance, was like, no, you come to Parkland and talk to me. Like, okay, you literally have your chance to talk to the president. You want to talk to so much about gun control. Nope, you missed your chance. You decided to go to your echo chamber over at CNN so you could get some applause lines. No, not how it works, kiddo.
Yeah, and I mean, that's why he wanted to do it. And again, if this whole thing was not orchestrated in terms of how it's unfolding, where like it's like all these kids unanimously hate guns, and all the people in the audience also hate guns, and they all cheer really loud when David Hogg like drops the mic or something that's like just asinine like that.
Mm-hmm.
You could say that it maybe isn't orchestrated if, like we talked about before in the first episode, if Colton Hab had not been basically pushed out and not allowed to speak on TV because he didn't want to agree with the anti-gun message, and David Hogg, he YouTube took the video down of him forgetting his lines because he was coached on what to say.
Yep.
And if he hadn't been coached on what to say, well, we could say that it's not being orchestrated, but it obviously is. It's not even being orchestrated well.
No.
Yeah.
It's a.
Well, it's the silliness, like when Nancy Grace was being interviewed on CNN, and you see they pretend like they're in completely different parts of the country or whatever, and you see the same three cars go behind Nancy Grace and then whoever was interviewing her on CNN. They're standing in the same parking lot. It's like, really? Why?
Yeah. And it's not about keeping kids safe, because if it was about keeping kids safe, then these teachers who, I think it was the Daily Beast that I read it in, that teachers refused to even consider carrying a weapon on campus. Like and again, it's not about keeping kids safe. It's about spiting Trump. It's about spiting what being a middle American gun owner is emblematic of, and if it was about keeping kids safe, then we wouldn't have these teachers that are saying, no, we won't give in to Trump's demands. Like, wait, did Trump put a gun in your hand? Like, I remember him saying that he said that we should have well-qualified teachers that are qualified to carry weapons. But now teachers are firing back saying, like, no, we're not going to give in to your demands to give us a gun to protect kids, because then that would be, fascism or something. It's not about keeping kids safe.
They won't cave to Trump's demands to protect kids. Like, that's such an irrational demand that you have the chance to protect your kids. Like, okay, whatever.
Right. No, I think it costs about $10,000 per year per person you arm for a yearly training and stuff like that, because it is more diligent training than would be just, regular CCW, granted. And that's a very liberal number for the cost of that. Well, you put 1 in 10 in the schools, that's not a huge amount. I mean, that's enough to basically, you don't even have to say just a general 1 in 10. You don't have to say exactly how many.
No.
Just, a general rule of 1 in 10, and more if you can, more if you want, And, yeah, you just let it go from there. It's really not that big of a deal. It'll stop most of them from even just occurring in the first place.
Right.
Where
sign outside the school.
Right, where the kids will just go get the poor kids will just go get shot at home anyway, which it happens most of the time. But but at least 400 people or 400 students in 5 years won't get a bullet in them. Okay, fine, you've fixed a problem for the most part. I mean, at least you fixed a small amount of shootings for people. That's good. I'm glad.
The question about money is absurd because the money's there.
It is,
and it's funny. This goes back to unions. A lot of the whole, like in California, especially when teachers gripe about not having money for school supplies and this and that. It's like, we'll talk to your union because your union is the reason that you don't have money. Because, it's a little bit more nuanced than that. But like in California, again, there are schools that have all these like what to call them without flagging which school I'm talking about. but there are a lot of these like special like extra programs where, like for example, this is pretty common in especially Southern California, where you have these Hispanic students that don't speak English, right? Or are second English is their second language. And because English is their second language, some of these schools will classify them as disabled, or sorry, they have a learning disability. Seriously, because English is their second language. Then those students we put into like an extra kind of like a specialized program.
Yeah, those students get more per student than the average student.
Right, they do. Well, it's like they get put into this like specialized program because they are now disabled, because not speaking English classifies you as disabled, and all like the infrastructure, the salaries, the supplies, and all the stuff that goes into making this program, that consumes an insane amount of resources from the school, right? And like who do you think gets the benefit from these programs that actually don't help kids? Like that's like a really old thing that we've agreed upon, is that these like that the California school system and like all these progressive policies and all the concessions they make for like bilingual programs, they don't work. Like these kids don't learn how to speak English better, and by the time that they graduate, like the proficiency rate in terms of later in high school, the proficiency rate is still horrible. But again, unions push these programs because at the end of the day, they're the ones that get to take something off the top of it. You know, it's more like money that they get to scrape off the top. And that whole tangent goes into like Camden. In Camden, New Jersey, there's a school, and I think this school spends 3 times the national average per child, and they have some of the lowest proficiency scores upon graduation. That's
usually the case.
Right.
That's usually the case.
They do. You're right. Like the top 10 schools are actually some of like they spend considerably less than the top worst schools.
That's the case all across Ohio. I mean, the Cincinnati public schools are one of the most well-funded, and granted, they actually do have started scoring higher on proficiency. We started magnet school programs and stuff like that, but 10 years ago we were one of the worst, and we were still getting more and more per child than any other place in the state, pretty much.
Right. Well, what I was going to say about Camden is this whole roundabout tangent is that in Camden, one of the reasons the school spends so much money on students is because they have a 125 person security force in Camden because it's such a dangerous area.
Mm-hmm.
So the argument that there's not enough money for security at any school is absurd. And it comes back to the fact that this is not about keeping kids safe. It's about spiting the Second Amendment. It's about spiting Trump supporters, about the president. It's ridiculous.
And again,
it's not even about wanting to teach our kids anymore. I mean, that's the sad part. It hasn't been about wanting to teach our kids for 40 years.
All they've been about
we wouldn't be in this situation.
The public school system for years has been an indoctrination camp, especially at the universities, but even in the high school levels too. But that was also the other thing, is that the gun control debate, as I was pointing out, it's all convenient distraction. Even Trump is acknowledging this on Twitter. It's all distraction from the fact that Democrats totally dropped every single ball they possibly could on DACA, and it's going to expire, and it will be on them, and they're trying to distract away and say, no, it's okay, let's move to gun control. We can totally win on that one now. We just lost 700,000 trained operatives and potential voters, but it's okay. We can win on gun control now, guys. No, that's not going to work out for you at all.
No, because again, as loud as the people in the media are, because it really is what it is. They're a vocal minority because they control the media. They control, like not just like like the LA Times, which I hate, Washington Post, which I also hate, but they also control Facebook, and so of course, and that's kind of the tactic. It's to isolate people, make people like us feel like we're isolated. Like, oh man, I'm one of the few people that thinks this way, and it's like maybe I should agree with this because it's coming at me from all over legacy media. I must be the odd man out, but that's not the case.
Because most people just want to live their lives. They just want to, go to work, come home, and just be happy. And they're going to agree with whatever's going to make them, the happiest in the long run or what they conceive of as the long run, because that's just what most people want, and it's ridiculous that it's used to isolate people and then force them down these paths to make them think that that's what's going to make them happy in life. And it's just sad.
That actually does remind me of a story I saw, a headline the other day, that what the social media companies, as you pointed out, are really going out of their way to do. Let me see if I can pull up the story here. It was on Red Elephant, a website called Red Elephants, pointing out that Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter are outright removing posts that are critical of David Hogg and Emma Gonzalez in particular, because they're really the two figureheads. And, of course, yeah, you have these conspiracy theories that, they're crisis actors, they're not really students, they're both, 30 years old, and, yeah, okay, those are obviously not real, but, there's definitely claims to be made.
Alex Jones!
There's definitely many claims to be made that these kids are definitely puppets of the anti-gun lobby, and, yeah, you can look at shady stuff with David Hogg, rehearsing his lines and whatnot, but now posts just criticizing these two are being deleted off of Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter, because, we shouldn't expect anything less from the social media giants, but they're really going out of their way to suppress even the truth, or even any questioning of what they peddle as the truth.
Yeah, and, man, what's been bothering me is seeing some conservatives, I guess mainstream conservatives, who are kind of like, it's not a big deal, get over it, it's like you're imagining this stuff, we're not actually being censored, it's like, I don't know how. Are you actually a progressive? I don't understand how it could be any more obvious that.
I hate when I hear that. Yeah.
That this whole they are trying to bury any notion that this whole anti-Second Amendment children's crusade is deliberate. It didn't just it's there's I think it was the Washington Post that ran an article that said it was here's how this organic grassroots movement began, and I'm like. What?
ABC did that too.
There's nothing organic or grassroots about this. It's so deliberate, and it's so as soon as a shooting breaks out, just the tour buses break out, the PR the publicists come out in droves, CNN's we'll have a town hall. It's there's absolutely nothing grassroots about this.
Not even
That's
close.
just like calling the Dakota Access Pipelines protest grassroots.
Those were funny.
Some of that was, but a lot
those
of
were
it was
funny.
orchestrated.
To me, though, those were funny, and it was easy enough to write those off because they were literally worthless. Literally all it was that, remember the big trend that became going on the Facebook and clicking the button that says checked in at the Dakota Access protest. So you have millions of kids not even going to the protest, just checking on Facebook. And I saw friends of mine in school, quote unquote friends at college, unironically doing that and being all in solidarity. So those you can make fun of, but these are serious because these are actually having a serious effect. So we gotta keep, but these are definitely orchestrated and we gotta be wary of these, but man.
It is, and I plan on going to the March for Our Lives, and so I went to the March for Science.
Oh boy.
Yeah, there's nothing.
How was it?
I don't.
Did you say hi to Neil deGrasse Tyson
it wasn't
for
a
me?
march. It was not a March for Science. We'll just say that, and I knew it wasn't going to be it's such a joke. You get there, and it's every other picket sign is some cartoon of Trump taking a dump on planet Earth or something like that, and you talk to people, and of course it's it was hard. I showed up and I was like, is this actually the women's march? Because there are a lot of women wearing the pink pussy hats and all that.
Goodness.
And I walked into a crowd of them and I was like, hey, I'd like to talk to you guys. I support Trump. And then that's how I broke the ice, which looking in retrospect, that might not have been wise. But that's how I broke the ice. And we ended up talking, and out of a crowd of 10, only 2 were open to a conversation. And it was awful. It wasn't about science. It wasn't about actually any meaningful message. It was the same thing. Despite Trump, despite his base, anybody who disagrees with him, really.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what this is going to be. March for Our Lives will be an emotionally charged, infantilized thing where there's nothing meaningful will happen. It's just going to be a organized public shaming against people who disagree with them.
Of course.
And it's going to be awful. It's going to be awful, but that's the price you pay for living in California. And there's actually really no return on that price. People are like, oh, the beach is great. No, the beach is great.
The beach is third world filled with homeless people.
Essentially, and it's the cancer is aplenty.
Mm-hmm.
But speaking of cancer, a friend sent this to me.
Oh boy.
The other 98%, which is a Facebook group, that has like over I think like close to 6 million followers on Facebook, and it's one of the biggest like left wing progressive meme pages. And
it's up there with like Occupy Democrats.
First, let's get things straight. The left can't meme, right? That's
right.
And this is actually a great example of that.
Mm-hmm.
It's sort of a shot at people that wanted to arm teachers. And it's Chris Kyle, the greatest American sniper in military history, was shot and killed when confronted with a bad guy with a gun. So we just have trained teachers a little bit better than Chris Kyle. There's so much wrong with that. There's so much that's irreverent about that. So much that's wrong about it. It's like, well, he was. It's funny because like so many things conservatives say, it's not just wrong on every level, but it also kind of shoots them in the foot, so to speak.
Mm-hmm.
Because Chris Kyle was shot in the back by a guy who was suspected of being like mentally unwell, which brings us back to what Trump had said, that this is not a gun issue, it's a mental health issue, it's a social and cultural issue.
Exactly.
So, I mean, to just skip over the fact of how like disrespectful that meme is, because like I'm a huge fan of Chris Kyle.
Same.
I read his book when it came out, and I was really upset when I found out what happened. So this really shows that there's no limit to what these people will politicize and spin out of context. Not children, not dead veterans. You know, like there's nothing. Nothing is sacred, and that's part of this movement.
Exactly. Yeah. That they have no morals. They have nothing left. They literally don't love America at all. They literally just want their own new, as Obama said, this fundamentally transformed society where they don't have the Second Amendment. The First Amendment only applies to those who don't commit thought crimes, and they don't even respect the military. They don't even respect one of the greatest American heroes in history. That's just how disgusting these people are.
Right. Well, and I mean, there's all that, and oh god, I lost my train of thought. Sorry.
Good. I'm glad.
Thanks.
What were you gonna say, Pepe?
Do you remember?
I just said thanks. No, I'm good. You go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that when you said that they don't love America, I thought the ghost of George W. Bush was in my room with me, looking over my shoulder.
That's a creepy
thought. No, it's true.
No. I actually did remember what I was gonna say. But like you see, like political satire and stuff like that, and like from like South Park and stuff, they're coming at it from a place where they love America. You can be critical of the country and still love it. That's the point of satire. But they made it so bad and just so overt that they just hate the country, hate the institutions on which it's founded on. They're not just critical of them; they want to tear them down and start again. And they don't make that, covert at all. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Right, and there is like I try to make that distinction that because it's the whole like there's actually a term for it, asymmetric motive attribution, that because we're motivated by feelings of like patriotism and nationalism, that that you love this nation and your neighbors and all that, that we're obviously motivated by those things like patriotism and compassion and stuff like that. And then so clearly the people that are opposed to us and disagree with us must be motivated by like hatred and malevolence. But I try to remember that that is a thing that people ascribe to in groups and out groups, but it's hard to say that the people that put this stuff out there are in fact motivated by hatred and malevolence. Like how do you it's right there. Like they're being honest about it. They're saying no. Like we hate the Second Amendment. We hate the First Amendment, and we think like Obama's tweet that they need to remake this world. I mean, it's hard to say that like, well, it's coming from the right place. It's like, no, they literally want to remake it into the right place for them.
Right.
Their little utopia that they want.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that's it for today. For anyone who's unfortunate enough to listen to us, thanks for tuning in, and we'll catch you guys later.
Later, guys.
Bye.